Today I'm going to show you how to make the easiest and most delicious tiramisu, and it requires no cooking whatsoever. Before we dive into the ingredients, 90% of you who watch this are not subscribed, so please just hit that like, comment, subscribe, anything, it helps a lot. So overall ingredients, the main thing you're going to need here is mascarpone, 16 ounces of it. If you can't find this big one, you should be able to find 8-ounce containers at your local grocery store. Then we're going to need a cup and a third of espresso or a really nice dark coffee. I'm going to use a little bit of dark rum. You do not need to do that. And then we're going to need some eggs, a little bit of sugar, and that is the overall bulk of this, plus some heavy whipping cream. You really want the coffee at room temperature, so to help that out, I'm going to pour it into a bowl here, and then I'm going to add that rum into it. That's about 1/4 of a cup. We're going to throw that right in, and we're going to let this sit off to the side while we assemble everything else. That'll give it a good amount of time to really cool down. Otherwise, those lady fingers, when you dip it in them, will really just turn to mush right away. So you want this as cool as you could possibly get it. Once you push that off to the side, we're going to get all 16 ounces of that mascarpone out into a very large mixing bowl. And then to this, we're going to add 1/4 of a cup of that dark rum. You can omit that if you don't like the rum taste, because it will be very present in the final product. And then I'm going to add vanilla. Most people don't add vanilla at this step, but I do think it is very useful. And then we're just going to mix this until it becomes nice and cohesive. If you want to use a stand mixer, you can. I think the hand mixer is a little easier to overall use and clean, but use whatever you're comfortable with. And the stand mixer, when we whip the cream later, might also be helpful. But that's what you're looking for right there. Put that off to the side, and now we're going to need 6 large egg yolks. I started to kind of mess these up by just trying to keep them in the shell and keep my hands clean, but the easiest way is to just pour them out into your hands and let the egg whites stream off that way. You can keep those egg whites for a meringue or just an egg white omelet, anything. Just throw those back in the fridge, and they'll be good for a couple of days. 6 large yolks, like I said. If you have small eggs, maybe do 7 to be safe. We're going to put these into a larger mixing bowl, and to that we're going to add 2/3 of a cup of granulated sugar and mix those until they're just well incorporated. The next step is the closest thing you'll come to cooking, and we're going to get a little bit of water boiling, and we're going to cook these over the double boiler, bain-marie, whatever you'd like to call it, just until those egg yolks reach a food-safe temperature. That's because you're incorporating them right into the dish without really cooking them. So throw them over a little bit of steaming water and just mix these for the next 3 to 5 minutes, constantly moving them. Your sugar will start to break down, and it'll become this beautiful pale yellow color like that, like a hollandaise sauce. You can see there's no sugar left. It's really starting to thicken up. If your eggs are slightly undercooked, you probably won't get sick. Most eggs are pretty safe these days anyway, but cook them until you get that nice pale yellow color, and then you're ready to move on to the next step. I'm going to give it one last mix off the heat to make sure nothing's stuck to the bottom. And now we're going to incorporate this right into the mascarpone mix. Get that in, get it all scraped out of the bowl, and then I'm going to use that hand mixer again to come in, mix it until it's very nice and well incorporated. And once we're done with that, I'm going to throw this into the fridge while we do the rest. It'll just help it kind of stay very nice and cohesively mixed together, and it won't start to separate or become too warm. Scrape down all that extra around the outsides. You'll likely need every ounce of this when you assemble it, and then throw that into the fridge, and we're ready to move on to the next step, which is whipping cream. This is 2 cups. This is going to get mixed into that mascarpone mixture also. I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of vanilla to this. If you like less vanilla, add a little less. If you really like that vanilla flavor, this should be just enough for you. I'm going to use my hand mixer with the whisk setting just to get this started, and I'm going to finish it by hand. Some people will do this in a stand mixer. You want to make sure you're not over whipping the cream, and the stand mixer might get you to that point, so just pay attention if you're using the stand mixer option. Here's where it's starting to really get nice and fluffy, so I'm going to switch at this point to the hand whisk. That's the point I'm looking for right there. It's holding its shape perfectly. It's not getting those huge stiff peaks, so maybe it's slightly over or under whisked, but it doesn't really matter at this point. It's holding its shape, and it is whipped cream. So we're going to add that directly into that mix that was sitting in the fridge, and then we're going to fold this in gently. You do not want to over whisk this or overwork it right now. Just slowly start to incorporate it until you don't see any more of that whipped cream streaking through that yellow mix, and that's all you need to do. Scrape those sides as you go, and then kind of pull it towards the middle very gently. Do not overwork this, and you will be absolutely perfect. Once you do that, you are ready to start assembling. That's what it should look like, kind of like a loose dough. We're going to grab a 9x13 baking dish, our coffee mix, and the lady fingers. These are Saviardi brand. If you can't find them in your supermarket, they're on Amazon, and they'll come very quickly, so make sure you're getting the right ones. I don't think the Goya ones are very good, so try to find these good Italian ones. And then we're just going to mix these in that coffee mix and lay them one by one. It's literally a 1-second dunk. Like, put it in, flip it over, pull it out immediately. Once you get to the point where you can't fit a full one in your pan, just kind of measure it out, and then you could cut them using an offset spatula or a knife, and just continue layering those until you have that full bottom covered. And then we're going to start to put in our mix. This is about half of that mascarpone whipped cream vanilla mix. Get that in and grab your spatula and really try to lay it out nice and flat. You're going to need to put another layer of the ladyfingers over this. You don't need to be an absolute perfectionist about it, but try to get it as flat and even as you can. Right there, I'm totally fine with, so we're going to leave it at that and now do a whole nother layer of those ladyfingers. I like to flip the side that was the full ones, so on the bottom ones, those halves are where the full ones were. It just helps with cutting it later. And now we're going to grab the remainder of that mix and really lay it out. And this part you do want to try to get nice and even. You're going to put the cocoa powder right over the top of this, so any dimples will kind of be shown. So try to get it laid out as even and flat as you can. Nice layers here that really kind of give you a perfect even surface. That is pretty good. I'm happy with that. Could it be better? Yeah, but that's all you need to do. And now we're using Dutch processed cocoa. This is the dark version that you'll find in the stores. I think this gives it the best flavor. It's going to make a mess while you do this. Just know that. Get into like a little sieve of some sort and just kind of tap it and move it around. Try to get as even of a coat as you can. This will sit overnight in the fridge, and this cocoa powder will absorb some of the moisture, so we'll do more in the morning, and you just want to make sure it's nice and fully covered. We're going to cover it in a little bit of cling film here also. Get it real tight so it doesn't touch the top of that cocoa powder, and then throw it in the fridge at least overnight before you dive into this. Here we are the next day. I finished this at around 4 p.m. yesterday. I let it sit overnight, and now we're right around the 20-hour mark, 24-hour mark. Pull off that cling film and give it a nice look. You want to see this beautiful dark color. That means it started to absorb some of the moisture off the top. It'll really help that flavor, and it smells so good at this point. But I'm going to lay down some paper towels to make a little less of a mess today. And we're going to add one more layer of fresh cocoa powder. It'll give it a nice light brown color like most restaurants do. You don't need to do this. You could eat it right now. It doesn't really make a huge difference, but it'll give it a nice light color here, and it'll give it a little bit of a taste difference. So try it with and without, see what you prefer. But now we're going to dive into it. As you can see cutting through it, it's not liquidy. Those eggs really make this kind of like a custard when mixed with everything, so you need that time in the fridge to set, and that's where we're at right now. Also, just know the first piece you cut out of this is going to be an absolute mess. It's hard to get under it, hard to pull it out. So that's going to be the piece you eat as the cook. You're going to really need some help. I have an offset spatula here. Try to not touch the top because your fingers will ruin that nice fresh layer of the cocoa powder. But once you pull that one out, it'll be fairly easy to get the rest out. But those layers are already looking fantastic. So let's grab a nice piece here, throw it on a plate, and look at that. That's exactly what you're looking for. Those ladyfingers become almost like a layer of cake. From certain angles, you can't even tell that they're individual pieces of ladyfinger, but most importantly, let's dive in and see how this tastes. If you're not a huge fan of the rum flavor, you probably want to omit that because a day later here, it is still very rum forward. I enjoy that, but it might be better if you don't, especially if kids are eating it. The alcohol is not cooked off, so there's definitely a little bit of an alcohol content, but everything else works so well together. Those ladyfingers have absorbed all the liquid and become very beautiful and cake-like. The cocoa powder is delicious. Each layer is nice and vanilla-y, a little bit sugary. This is just the perfect Italian dessert. If you've never tried making this, give it a try. It'll take a little bit of time, but it is very easy and anyone can do it.